all, thank you for tuning in for this episode of We the People's Journalist Detroit. Today, our guest is Richard Pineau, the chair of the Academic Senate's Ad Hoc Subcommittee on Artificial Intelligence at Wayne State University. Thank you for joining us today. Could you give us a little bit of background on what you've been working on as chair of the subcommittee?
Sure. Thank you, Faith, and hello to everyone who watches this or listens later on. So yes, as Faith said, my name is Richard Pineau. My full-time role is professor. I'm a full professor of teaching in the Department of Mathematics, so I teach everybody's favorite subject. And I'm also a member of the Academic Senate, and this is sort of how I've got involved in chairing this committee. So I've been on the Senate now, I think 9 years. My term's coming to an end. I'll probably be up again. But we had spent a little bit of time in 2022, 2021 on academic integrity, the other AI, and we had just wrapped up that work. It was a part of a smaller subcommittee that I was a part of. This email came about ChatGPT and generative AI, and all of a sudden everybody said, oh my goodness, this is going to have some serious implications. So I sent an email to the Senate President, Professor Linda Beal, and I said, Linda, we got to get ahead on this. And she says, you got to chair the committee. She got me. And so that's a good way of how to get involved or sort of volunteer yourself in one way. And I've been happy to do it. Now, when we first began the work in 2023, really 2024, we had to really think about how to get syllabus language out there, because there are a lot of instructors who are struggling to say, okay, what do we need to tell students? Do I allow AI use in my classroom or not? And so that was really one of the first things that, and also just started to explore what exactly this technology can do and what are the things that we need to be concerned with. And so the following academic year, the committee obviously continued its work, and I participated in an online course that was offered through Course Hero that brought together people from all over the world for a month, and we talked about the implications of AI in higher education and ways to use it also in the classroom, because there were some instructors who were very much so interested in using it as a teaching tool to sort of help build critical thinking skills, et cetera. And so that course explored a lot of that, in addition to the implication piece to that, right? And then really since then, we've been trying to keep up with the technology, which has been difficult because there's been an oversaturation in my view. Everything is AI now, right? The phone is doing AI stuff, you do a Google search now. And we've been exploring a lot of stuff on the policy side. So more recently, we provided some draft guidance for graduate program directors and their departments for coming up with policies for master's and PhD students. And we've been thinking about the Trump administration's AI action plan and what the implications to that is going to be on higher ed. Obviously, the environmental impact is still a concern. We have a lot of good colleagues at the university who are doing pretty awesome things using AI, both in their research and in their work. So just trying to keep tabs on all of that and supporting those individuals who do want to use AI, but also being mindful of the concerns and reservations that still many people have. So it's kind of, in a nutshell, sort of the work that we've been doing.
Thank you. That is wonderful to hear. I'm sure there's a lot under that scope. When it comes to our university, what are we seeing as the most beneficial outcomes and how this is being integrated into the academic world?
Sure. I think there are a number. So on the research side, we have a number of colleagues who are using AI. They're doing research in AI. So it is a discipline, right? So there are computer science experts, for example, who do research using AI. So we have that. That's been going on for many decades, really since 1950s when artificial intelligence came out as a discipline of computer science. But we do have researchers who are using AI to help run simulations. This can be cost effective instead of running a full experiment with real subjects. There are a number of folks using it for the data analysis component, which can be more powerful necessarily than a typical computer software that someone might use. We've also have a number of individuals who are trying to support research in AI, but more interdisciplinary. So not just specific to computer science. So there's an AI and Data Science Institute that my department chair happens to be a co-director of. That has been brand new the last couple of months as this charter. We have some research going on in the health sciences with how AI can be used to perhaps help patients or maybe help doctors in keeping efficient medical records, certainly helping with diagnosis. There's been some use of that, of course, with caveats, because the AI isn't going to be perfect. So it still requires a human element to sort of and verify the output. And then also on the educational side, we have faculty who are using AI as part of their classwork, inviting students to use it. So perhaps comparing or teaching students a particular skill and then using the AI to generate an output and having the students sort of analyze and say, okay, is what the AI produced, is it really good against the criteria and things that we've been talking about? So some comparison in that respect. Where it gets tricky is sometimes these tools are embedded in courseware. So I would imagine that there may be classes that students are taking, they're doing an online homework, and there's AI that's embedded in that, whether it's a tutor or maybe some kind of search entity in the website that can allow them to get things a little bit quicker or more efficient. But those are some of the things that have been going on.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you think overall we are seeing students get benefits from that educationally in the skills that they are taking with them when they
I
use
think,
those?
sure. I think for the courses where the AI is being deliberately used, and what I mean by that is that an instructor has a learning outcome or they're doing something to support their learning outcomes in the courses, that yes, students are definitely going to be able to take something away. We've seen some trends where employers, depending on the discipline, may actually want graduates who have experience in prompt generation, for example, or they know how to use certain AI tools. And so I don't have a sense of which disciplines that exist because we have so many, right? That we leave that to the content experts, the faculty, and the departments to kind of understand those needs a little bit more. I think, Faith, where the problem comes in is when students begin to sort of outsource their learning to AI, right? That's where we run into some challenges. But I think to answer your question, I think for those instructors who are using it very deliberately to support their learning outcomes or even program outcomes, that yes, students are seeing some benefit to its use.
Yeah, so let's talk about the other side of that as well. So, what concerns are we seeing rise about how generative AI could be impacting the actual education that is being received by students and academic integrity?
Sure, and that's a big one. That's really the big thing, the big challenge that we've been trying to deal with. Really, all education, never mind higher ed. I mean, K-12 is struggling with this too. Part of the problem is that there's an oversaturation of AI everything. Right? You call customer service anywhere and you're dealing with some kind of AI bot. You Google search something, you're getting an AI. Adobe, right, has an AI. I open a PDF and it wants to give me a summary. I open up my web browser and it wants to give me a summary of the web page, right? So we're getting inundated with all of these tools. So it makes it hard to avoid that. And I think that's the first challenge that we have today. This is going to continue, I think, to get worse. It wasn't like this a year ago or even a year before that. Because these tools, you had to go and find them, right? So as people, commercial entities, business, et cetera, are getting on this bandwagon, it's just becoming an oversaturation. I mean, even I'm getting it on the faculty side with, hey, here's a product that we have. It's going to save you time as an instructor. You should think about buying this for your students, right? And it's in a textbook or it's some kind of agentic AI that can make decisions for me and help with grading, right? So from the instructor side, I'm getting all of these sort of things. So I can't imagine what the students are getting. And I get it when I look YouTube, you get advertisements for these different things, AI tools that can help with writing a paper and these sort of things. So all this to say, I think students are immersed in all of this, and it's very easy to take advantage of these resources. And so I think what students need to ask themselves is, why am I coming to a university? Why am I coming to obtain a degree? What's the point of this? And so if the point is to be a journalist or a mathematician or a pharmacist or someone who's going to work in humanities, right, then you have to ask yourself, well, then what am I going to do when I get into my classes? Am I there to learn? And if so, what is that learning going to look like? Does that mean that what I'm going to be doing is essentially my own work? And if so, what tools am I going to use to help me? And so as a simple example, I write a paper, I use a grammar editing software that might have AI. Okay, that might be an appropriate use depending on the course. I think where we're starting to see, not starting, but we've had problems with this, Faith, is where students are using AI, generative AI tools to complete homework assignments, to complete other assignments for classes, and they're turning that in as their own work. And that constitutes plagiarism. We had a report from the Dean of Students Office a couple of months ago that about half of academic misconduct cases at Wayne State are now AI related. Just for comparison, a year ago it was 33%. One out of every three cases were AI. So there has been an uptick in that. And then the answer to that question, or the question is why? Why are students doing this? Part of the narrative is that as instructors, we need to convince students that our courses are important, that the assignments that they're doing are important. The idea there then is that a student may take the assignments seriously. And that may be one piece to this, but now I'm concerned because now I have to market my courses, right? Students take statistics, which is one of the courses that I teach, for a reason. They need it as part of their degree program, most of them. Now, on the other side of this, I know there are students who are working a ton of hours a week, some full-time jobs. They're taking an immense amount of credits. They've got a lot of pressures. They may have family obligations, other obligations, health concerns, etc. Then there comes time, right? Something's due at 11:59 p.m. I've got an hour. I don't really understand it. Maybe it's better to do the easy way out. And I'm not condoning that, but that might be a reality that a number of students actually have. So then it becomes easy to just use the AI tool to do that. So there's a lot of layers to this, Faith, that I think we really need to kind of understand. Again, there's that oversaturation. There is that, okay, do I see value in what I'm doing here at the university? Do I see value in the courses that I'm taking and the assignments? And then ultimately, where are my priorities? How much time am I able to devote seriously to the assignments? And if you're letting the AI do the thinking, then it's not going to help you when it comes time for those exams that you have, or the larger scale projects or papers where now you need to apply what.
And so a follow-up there I would have is, what could the negative consequence be of educators from primary education to higher education not being able to kind of check or stop that before the time has, let's say, for example, someone makes it through multiple courses and made it through a significant portion of their degree, or maybe graduated, having used a substantial amount of generative AI. What could the negative outcomes of something like that be if someone didn't actually learn what they achieved a degree for?
I think those consequences could be very serious. If someone is able to sort of make their way through a degree program and, for lack of a better way of describing it, BS their way through it using AI, at some point that's going to catch up to them, whether it's on a standardized admissions exam. Maybe the person is looking to go into the medical field and they have to take the MCAT or the CAT or that test or dentistry school. But also once they get into their profession and they're hired full time, right, and their supervisor tells them, okay, you need to do task X, and suddenly they don't have the skills to do it, they're not going to last very long then in their profession, and that's going to be problematic. And so we would hope that someone would not get through there. They would realize at some point, okay, I need to know these skills, to be able to move on into their profession. But I think the consequences to that sort of very serious, and it's going to come out very easily once they get there.
Yes, and so with that, what kind of stops do we have in place that we're using to cope with that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the first thing is, again, part of the work that my committee has done is to strongly encourage instructors to talk to their students about using AI. And that's as simple as a syllabus policy. And the syllabus policy can be that I'm prohibiting the use of AI in my classroom. And we explain why. Now, I teach lower level mathematics courses where there is a lot more focus on skill development, because you're going to need those skills in higher level math courses where maybe AI would be appropriate to use because it could be applied in those areas. So if you're learning the basics, you can't have any help except me as the instructor, right, and your peers. So no AI is allowed. We don't even allow the calculator, right? So making sure that that's clear to students and that they understand, okay, I'm not using AI because I need to learn the basics. Okay, that's a fair point. Let me dig into this. Compared to other courses where an instructor might say, AI is going to be allowed, and here are the ways in which we're going to allow AI use. So there are some very clear parameters, right, so that folks don't veer off the level. So for example, if it's a heavy writing course, maybe using Grammarly that has the AI tools in it is going to be an important piece to that. Now, the other side of this, we have to think about the drawbacks of using AI. There are serious environmental concerns, and so we do have to be respectful for that and sort of remind students that, even if you type in one prompt, it's a considerable amount of resources that you're taking environmentally, right? Compound that times how many people using AI? simultaneously, right? That's a lot. It's going to add up quickly, exponentially in some respects. But also, when you use an AI tool, you're giving up something of yourself. And I don't know if folks realize this. What goes into that AI tool stays with that company. You don't know what happens to it. And that's why there's all these cautions about entering personal information. So part of this, Faith, is educating students on, okay, if you are going to use AI and you want to play with it a little bit, you got to know not to enter personal information. Do you read the terms of use? Now, I never read the terms of use. I don't know if you've ever read the terms of use to anything, like an app you get or download on your phone. It's not the most exciting document to read. We actually had to do this as part of an assignment in that online course that I told you about, was to go through the terms of service. And I did. And I couldn't believe it, because some areas of that, they talked about tracking my location by IP address. They were going to track my information that I was entering. And so do we realize all of these things? When we click yes, I agree, and we move on. And I asked one of our committee members, who is a professor of law and the university's chief privacy officer, John Rothschild. I said, John, is there a format that we can follow to look for terms of service? Like, for example, is Section 2 the same on all terms of service, for whatever entity we're looking at? And he said, no, they can mix up things, they can hide things. So you really do have to make sure that you read those things carefully. But how many people know that, right? How many students know that? To sort of understand that. So part of this is making sure students are aware that when they are using these tools, there are some drawbacks to this, there are some implications. Yes, there are some positive sides, but also what would be the appropriate way. So another example is if a student has come to me and said, Rich, I want to be able to study, and I know you're not up at 2 a.m., but I want to be able to create some example problems. Can I use AI for that? Is that okay to use AI for? I say, sure, absolutely. But you have to know what questions to ask it. So you could ask it some help with sampling distribution for sample proportions. Can you give me some examples of this? And the AI can generate those problems. So some students want to use it as a study tool. Now, on the other side of that, the other problem we have is that there are AI tools that are study aids, but they allow the user to upload documents in order to create problems from those documents. Well, if the documents are from my class, technically that's my intellectual property. So there is a potential now that the student is implicating themselves to create an intellectual property right violation. What if it's a publisher material? What if it's publisher slides that I have permission to share on my Canvas site? But now they're uploaded into the site. Is there now copyright infringement that the student has subjected themselves to? So all this to say, Faith, we have to try to, as much as possible, educate students on, yes, these tools exist, but did you know all of these things, right? And sometimes we don't think about that when we open ChatGPT and start typing or upload documents to these sort of sites. And so that we have to be very careful there. So I think what a lot of instructors are doing, those who are using the AI, we've got syllabus language for sure for those who don't want to use it and those who are allowing it. But also in the courses where AI is allowed, there are some parameters that are set up so that students understand, number one, how to use the tools, how to analyze what the output is giving, but also these implications.
Wonderfully said. Thank you. That is very insightful. Is there anything in the questions that I asked you feel may not have touched on something that is important to get across to students or teachers?
Yeah, I think for students, what I've noticed, what my colleagues have noticed, is a decline in social interaction, like in the classroom. We've noticed a decline in office hours visits and seeking out help when there are struggles in the class. I think part of this might be still a consequence of the remote learning environment from COVID, right? Even though we're several years out from that, I think we're still kind of reeling from it. But I know that AI hasn't helped. And so I would really encourage, if you have students who listen or watch this, not to outsource their learning to AI. I would really strongly urge them to go and talk to their instructor. That's what office hours are for, emailing instructors, etc. And there are a number of students who say, I don't want to email at 2 a.m., 3 a.m. It's okay. We look at the email, in the morning time when we get up. It's no big deal. But not to outsource their learning to those places. There's no substitute for the instructor. And having person-to-person conversations, that's how you build a rapport with your instructor, especially if you need letters of recommendation. Sometimes people get writer's block. They have a difficulty with writing. That's okay. That's where you have conversation with somebody. Come in and talk to a real person, right? So we're losing that social interaction that humans crave. And I think as a substitute here, as AI is taking that place, I think there's been a couple of studies that have been done that's shown that that's actually being detrimental, especially for mental health for individuals. And so to the students who are listening and watching this, don't outsource your learning to AI. Really use your instructors. That's what they're there for. That's what you're paying the tuition dollars for. Aside from keeping the lights on at the buildings and all that other stuff, but really rely on your faculty. That's your instructors are there. Here, we hope to support you in the dreams. Take care.
Yeah, that's wonderful to hear all of that. I very much value that. And I hope that the listeners also find just as much value in that. So I want to go ahead and wrap it up here. And thank you again for our listeners. This is Richard Pineau. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is Faith Ballard signing off for We the People's Journalists Detroit. Thank you.